Welcome to WOW, the Woman of the Week podcast from Pharma Voice. This episode was made possible by a generous sponsorship from Elligo Health Research. For more information, visit elligohealthresearch.com. In this episode, Taryn Grome, Editor-in-Chief of Pharma Voice, meets with Jacylyn Dougherty, Chief Information and Technology Officer, Elligo Health Research.
Jackie, welcome to the Woman of the Week WOW podcast program.
Well, thanks so much for having me today.
It's our pleasure. Jackie, you have more than 20 years of progressive technology and data experience within the life sciences industry. Tell me what drew you to the industry to begin with.
Yeah, sure. So throughout college, I actually worked at SmithKline Beecham, which is now GlaxoSmithKline. And I worked in their technology department where I really had the opportunity to learn about the life science industry and how technology was really an important part of executing the company mission. So it really drew me to the life science industry itself. And then I obviously got experience in the industry as well, and then went into that right out of school. It also confirmed in my interest in technology, as I was also majoring in management information systems at that time as well.
That's interesting. First of all, I don't want to date you, but I remember back those days too when it was SmithKline Beecham. And now tell me a little bit about your journey, in this field, because truly there just aren't that many women who sit in seats of influence in the technology sector.
Yeah, I had an interesting and fun journey, in my opinion. After college, my first job was as a programmer analyst building interactive voice response systems for clinical trials. So I quickly moved into a solutions engineer and project manager role doing that same work. It gave me the opportunity to work with our major pharma sponsors to collect their requirements and their IVR system specifications. And I even had fun opportunity to attend investigator meetings to really ensure everyone participating in the clinical trial knew how the technology supported the study. In that role, I also configured the studies in the IVR platform next to some really talented engineers. So we had fun coding randomization algorithms and IP management logic, all the similar things that are still done today in that space. This all gave me the opportunity to learn, I think, different operational aspects of a clinical trial itself, but also various functional areas of tech. So I really loved it. During that time, I also got my MBA. And then I moved into really managing whole teams that supported clinical and business system teams or business systems at CROs. And that subsequently led to my role as CIO at that CRO as well. To me, a couple of key pieces stand out in my journey that I think are critical. I've always been really passionate about business partnership and collaboration, really building teams that are driven to execute and innovating on business processes.
Excellent. And, you talked about that IVR. Do you find it remarkable that where we are today from where you started back then? And do you think a lot has changed or just a little has changed since those early days?
Well, IVR has turned a little bit more into IWR as well, but I think a lot of the general processes and technology in that space have been pretty similar. Obviously, a lot of innovation in different aspects of clinical trials have occurred. But sometimes it does shock me how little has changed in the last 20 or so years as well.
And in your technology role, you really do sit at that crossroads between the scientists and the commercial folks and figuring out what's the best way to move those clinical trials forward, and working extensively with CROs. That technology role has really become so much more important. Do you feel that to be true as well? We're seeing it from our end.
Yeah, of course. Obviously, there's a lot of different technology trends and things affecting clinical trials as well. As I mentioned, I think that a lot hasn't changed at the same time. So really looking forward to continued innovation. I think that some of the impact of COVID has helped shine a light that we need technology I like to say it's sort of opposite of normal. Usually you're writing a business continuity plan around when technology's down. But under COVID and the pandemic, we actually flipped it a little bit, right? We couldn't do physical visits. You didn't have physical paper. All these things really constrained us, and we actually jumped to technology to help really continue the operations of the life sciences industry. So I think that was really impactful, hopefully, for technology use moving forward.
I couldn't agree with you more. We're just witnessing how much technology has come to play in terms of getting us, through those darkest days of COVID, and
Right.
to point is starting to begin to maybe seeing the light at the beginning of the tunnel. I wouldn't say at the end of the tunnel, but we're getting there. As the Chief Information Officer, tell me what this role entails and how does it align with the company's business model?
So Elligo's mission is to enable any patient to participate in a clinical trial, really through their own healthcare physician, which is obviously unique in the space. We enable that through our technology-enabled services, and that's powered by one of our proprietary products, the Elligo Research Stack. So our product management and engineering teams build and deliver that unique platform. They deliver features that really change business process and align research towards regular healthcare processes, which gets back to the company mission. And our IT team supports and secures the organization, implements other best-in-class technology to support other business use cases, such as talent services, sales, and finance. So my role includes building, inspiring, and really leading those technology teams to accomplish that company mission. Again, it also includes really strong business partnership with all levels of the organization, from our chief operating officer to our study coordinators to physicians directly as well. And that's really to get all of their voices heard so that when we can really truly deliver innovative solutions that work for our model. And then another key part of my job is ensuring our board members and leadership team understand our investments in technology and are aligned with the vision we have and appreciate how it drives value to our company, our customers, and our physician network as well. So I think that's really the keys of my role aligned to Elligo's business model.
Thank you so much for that. Is it a hard sell to the board at this point to prove the value that technology plays, or is this just a check on the box? Because really, how can we doubt what you all do and the connections that you have to the entire company?
Yeah, great question. So our board and our investors have always appreciated and frankly pushed our innovation in the space. They know Elligo is doing something unique and are really key investors in our strategy to build the best technology to achieve that mission. So they've always been supportive of this vision, and they always want us to make sure we're working on the best features to get the best return on investment for our mission. And of course, there's always, some people, not necessarily on our board, but of course in a lot of other companies, you might have to run up against either leadership teams or board members that are a little cynical about technology projects, right? A lot of them can get off scope, off budget, off cost. So there's of course that in the technology space that we have to overcome, but luckily at Elligo, we don't have that because of our board vision.
Fantastic. And so in terms of that vision and what you're doing with the scope of technology that's under your purview, what are some of the biggest areas that you think technology will have an impact on in the near term and then a little bit longer term?
So it goes back a little bit to what we were discussing before around technology and clinical research. And I do think that COVID has helped, again, shine a light on some opportunities to break away from old processes or even things that we relied on physically. So I do think things that we struggled with in the industry for a long time, such as implementing remote monitoring or or doing patient visits virtually now are somewhat the norm and somewhat a part of every clinical trial design consideration, especially as Elligo looks to help sponsors execute decentralized trials. So I think a lot of those technologies will really be key to not only implementing and executing clinical trials more efficiently, but again, broadening patient access, because the easier the processes are, the more people that can participate, and therefore ultimately we're benefiting patient participation as well. There's lots of other technology trends and such that we always keep an eye on too, such as use of healthcare data and how to improve the use of healthcare data for clinical trials. Of course, there's lots of cool things happening in healthcare technology. So looking to see how those can apply to clinical research. And then, of course, there's always patient privacy and data security as well that we have to keep abreast of as well.
Excellent. Let's unpack a little bit, if you don't mind. You brought up that magic phrase, decentralized clinical trials. Truly one of the hottest topics right now in the industry. But yet, a lot of the groundwork had been paved for DCTs a decade ago. So while it seems to be hot and new, it's about the processes and tying it all together that's new. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
I think so. And I think at least my perception in the industry is, what do you mean by DCT, right? Everybody seems to still have a little bit different of a definition. One of our really key differentiators for us at Elligo, we think, is really DCTs that still require healthcare in some way. Like you still have to do a lab, or you still have to see a doctor every once in a while. It's not necessarily fully direct to patient. So I think those nuances will actually help the concept of decentralized trials perhaps be more mainstream than we've seen before.
Excellent and great point. Yes, I think that everybody has a little bit of a different definition.
Right.
You also touched on about health tech in the healthcare sector. What do you mean by that? What are you looking at there?
In the healthcare tech side, I think they're a little ahead of the clinical research industry, where innovation tends to push a little bit more. Still struggle, I think, with perhaps being as innovative as some other industries. But I do think we've already seen it, right? It was getting to be more common for regular healthcare physicians to do virtual patient visits and such. But it wasn't that normal for it to be done in clinical research. So that's a good example where something that was becoming more normalized in healthcare and ahead of clinical research can now be taken advantage of in research as well. And perhaps Elligo sees that more uniquely, since we're working directly with healthcare physicians as well. So we just hope to continue to keep an eye on the healthcare tech innovation that's happening and hopefully find unique ways to apply it to our model.
Excellent. We've talked about your longevity in the industry. What do you consider to be some of the biggest milestones in terms of technology? Can you point to a company? We talked a little bit earlier about IVR. What else would you say is a game changer?
Well, obviously, if we're just talking about technology in general, the mass availability of smartphones and improved internet connectivity all over the world has certainly changed all of our lives and the way businesses work. But if we're talking about clinical research, I think it just goes back to the same thing, that we've been a little slower to innovate. I do think that some of the bigger trends are around implementation of some of these technologies to support different modes of clinical research, such as what we just talked about with DCTs or decentralized trials. And then again, how do we use healthcare data? The data already exists. How do we not have to redo everything in a clinical trial? So I think some of those uses and impacts are important for us to continue to monitor.
Excellent. Great insights. We started off the conversation talking about your role sitting in the C-suite and how unique it is for a woman to have that kind of role. What does this mean for you in terms of being a role model and the responsibility that bears, as well as widening the lane for other women? I've talked to a lot of women who go to technology conferences, and they'll text me and say, "You can't believe it. I am still the only woman sitting in this room."
I think, yeah, it's probably true. I think in clinical research, I think it might be a little bit more unique. We have a lot of women working in this industry, obviously, and therefore, I think on the technology side can see a little bit more. But yeah, I certainly appreciate it. It's certainly not the norm yet. I think at the end of the day, it's really showing anybody, all people, that there are opportunities for you if you just put into work. I am excited that more and more women seem to be getting into STEM programs and really getting into technology and contributing in the space. I think it is our job as women technology leaders just to continue to show other women there are unique and fun opportunities in technology. You can make a real impact on the business, you can provide real value, and their voice and contributions are really helpful to achieve the mission. So I think that's really important. I also recognize there can be challenges. Some people can just be about themselves, and whether maybe they're not rude because you're a woman, maybe they're rude because of an ego or something else, it doesn't matter, right? But it's really important for women to have a mentor to keep their heads up and I think be confident in the work that they're doing and the value that they're delivering. So ultimately, I think if you really keep your head up and provide value to the business, you'll feel good about that. And frankly, if that's not the culture you're in or appreciated in, you have the ability to change jobs. So really just appreciating those challenges and trying to be a mentor, I think, is key too. So hopefully that gives perspective. Obviously, mentoring is important as well. So they have opportunities, again, not just women, really anybody, have a good mentor to really have a sounding board so that as challenges in your career come up, you have someone to bounce things off of. And again, I think it's about confidence to take risk and be ready for opportunities as well.
I like that, being open to that opportunity. And sometimes that requires a sponsor, especially if you're a woman in this space. They need somebody else to be speaking up for them in those meetings where those decisions are being made. So it's a little bit different than mentoring, right? And so sponsoring is also very important. And since we're talking about team development and egos, what are some of your keys to building high-performing, customer-focused teams?
Yeah, it's a good question. I always say, my success is really because of my teams themselves. I think it's amazing when you have just a few key hires and a few key leaders in your organization are so important to really drive the desire for high performance throughout the whole rest of the team as well. So really, I think that's really critical to find those right leaders, whether they're actually functional leaders under technology groups or project managers or product managers. They're all leaders in my view. So I think that's really important. I think from a team perspective, it's also about all working together to achieve that mission and really having that desire for high performance and customer service orientation, to me, is very infectious amongst team members as well. So I think there are some key pieces from my experience.
Excellent. And speaking of your experience, you've talked a little bit about, what it takes to be successful in this technology world. Are there some lessons that you learned along the way that you wish you had known then that you know now as you were moving up the ranks?
Not necessarily, or nothing comes immediately to mind. I do think I had the opportunities to just be in groups and forums and teams, perhaps, that we were just talking about. High performing team, customer service orientation becomes infectious, so you just catch the bug, right? So I've been lucky from that perspective. I think, I had one of my one team member that works for me now tell me that one of the things that she likes about our teams is that we really have a diversity of thought. So it really helps women be very comfortable in the team because everybody's constantly challenging everything. So everybody's voice is heard, everybody's thoughts are equal. but she also thrives in the environment because she likes her thoughts to be challenged. So ultimately everybody learns and grows together as well. So, I think a lesson learned is looking for those opportunities to make sure you can flex and continue to learn. I can't think of anything else that comes to mind though.
Well, Jackie, you highlighted a really important thought there, and that's the diversity of thought and perspective. And what that brings to the group dynamic is really immeasurable, because it does allow other people or all people to be able to give voice to their thoughts and their visions. So that's great that that's encouraged by your teams, and that it's appreciated by your team. So, and that's a culture that is obviously developed by you sitting in that role. So kudos to you.
Yeah, thanks. And I think frankly, I think that's what the business then sees too, as you're partnered with them, right? So when you start asking, well, why do you need that technology, or what is really your business objective with that? It just tends to, they really see you're doing it to challenge the status quo and innovate moving forward. So that really helps the team be successful in the business too.
Absolutely. One of the things with technology too is that it's because it's always evolving. You have that stigma of not the stigma. You have that issue of legacy systems, and how do you build on top of a legacy system to disrupting the status quo, to keep pushing the needle forward, right? So how do you manage that?
Yeah, it's a good question, especially in certain functions. That tends to be more true too. I've definitely had the luxury over the last couple of years that we're really a startup, so we got to really implement some best-in-class technology, or build best-in-class technology, and did not have any legacy systems. But even this quickly, 5 years later, I would say we already have some. So technology just changes so frequently. It is hard. It's hard to keep track. It's hard for the business just to, spend a lot of money just to jump platforms every, 2 years. It's hard on the business, not just, financially to necessarily do that, but the change management aspect is really difficult as well. But I think you have to be open to it. I think ultimately it also goes back to the objective. You really need to understand the objective, and therefore, when you're assessing legacy systems and or new opportunities to move, you're really mapping it back to what you're trying to achieve. So you're also not wasting time or money on perhaps something you don't need to.
Absolutely. And you touched on another key point there, and that's change management. Technology is cool, but it's the people who use the tools that really need to be brought along the journey, right? And then change management is hard. I would imagine that's one of the hardest parts of your job.
Yes, absolutely. we like to say sometimes the technology is easier. The people impact is definitely it can be challenging, even in a culture that everybody knows you're changing every day. But ultimately, it is hard. I think not just in every business, frankly, not just in clinical research, but the people impact means jobs are changing. The bar is raised, frankly. You need to know how to be a good user of technology. Sometimes it's amazing to me that some people still lack that skill set to truly understand how to use tech. Data is another thing, ensuring that people understand data collection and why data is really important and valuable to a company, how your business uses information so that you can really help ensure that you're part of that vision and operational use of data and technology. So yeah, nowadays you have to really be prepared for continual innovation and change. It's just a way of life.
I like that. Be prepared for continual innovation. So the shift is constantly shifting under your feet. So
yes.
If she says, yes.
Yes.
So finally, you've had such a successful career. Tell me about an accomplishment or a wow moment that either shaped your career or changed the trajectory of your career.
I think the biggest moment for me was really a very specific year or two of time where I was actually part of a CRO, and we had to spin that company out from a big parent public company. And we spun it out to a private equity investor. At that point, we were losing a lot of money a year, and we knew we sort of hit rock bottom and had to turn it around. So in the meantime, we also had to merge two companies together before we did that and went private. So seeing all that and being a leader through all that change was really impactful for my career. And then we had a new CEO come in, and he really built a robust team and a plan. So within a quick period of time, we turned it around and made a big return for our investors. So to me, it was the big moment because I just got so much opportunity. You saw a company go in different phases. So it also made me appreciate that people thrive in different types of environments. And so I respect those who seek out opportunities that let them grow and succeed. So I had the really fortunate opportunity to participate all that. And I think that shaped my career and opportunities moving forward.
Wow. Yes. Who needs business school? You just went through that.
Yeah.
I can't think of another scenario that you could have thrown into that mix that could have made it even more difficult, unless you were taking the private back to the public in an IPO at the same time. But
it's true. We did not do that.
I think that's the only thing that was missing from that whole scenario. So congratulations on coming out the other end, and for coming out stronger. You didn't crumble under it, so that shows resiliency and fortitude and really smart stuff there. So thank you.
And the teams had to do it too, right? They had to flex, from downturn to growing and switching technology. It was definitely a big company impact.
Absolutely. That's more than a pivot. I think you hit the nail on the head when you say flex. They really did have to flex some muscles there to get through that.
Absolutely.
Well, kudos to you and to that team. It was a delight to speak with you. Thank you for shedding a light on technology, what it means to be a woman in technology, and where the industry is going. So thank you so much for being part of our WOW podcast program.
No, this was great. And thanks for inviting me and allowing me to share my perspective.
Thank you for listening to this episode of WOW, the Woman of the Week podcast. And thanks to Elligo Health Research for sponsoring this episode. For more information, visit elligohealthresearch.com. And don't forget to check out our other WOW episodes at pharmavoice.com/wow. This 2021 program is copyrighted by PharmaLinks, LLC.